So we're going to dive in, talk through some of the decisions that I made as I built the intro for this series. Today we're diving into a project, something I like to call Inside Motion here on the channel. And the project that we're going to be diving into deals with a lot of brush strokes, and I was asked the question about how I approach this. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to dive into this project and talk you through how I think about creating a project of this scope. Now, one of the things that I love about working with the NBA is the super talented team and designers that I get to work with. So Lee Olson created the amazing illustrations that you're going to see here, and Pete Richter and the rest of the NBA squad also provided the logo lockup and some direction here. So when starting a project like this, I usually get an end card. In this case, I got the illustrations and the logo lockup. So my job was to create a compelling intro that highlighted the Denver Nuggets' run to the championship. If you haven't watched the Photoshop tutorial that I created showing you how I create brushstrokes, you should pause this and head over and check that out. So I'm going to start by showing you how I incorporated the brushstrokes, and I'm also going to talk through some of the decisions that I made as I built the intro for this series. I'm going to start with these oil wipes that I created in Photoshop, so you can get a sense of the base here of what I was using to wipe everything on and off. So this is one of them, and the other one is this one that's middle out. So it starts here and works its way both up and down at the same time, and does totally fill the screen briefly, and then it wipes off. Same with this one, comes on, fills the screen, and then it wipes off. So let's jump into one of these transitions. Since there's less moving parts here, get a better sense of how I layered these oil swipes to come on. So let's walk through how I layered these swipes. You can see I have quite a few of them, and all of my other assets are matted to the swipes for the most part. So we have the first one, it's blue. The swipe is blue, so then the next swipe is going to be yellow, and I have the city as the background, the city map as the background of that one. And since we're starting with the logo here, then we go to the city with the next wipe and come to the logo as the next wipe on here that's blue. So I have this full screen to start, and then I go to the middle out. So I'm also adjusting which wipe I'm using, so I'm not constantly using the same wipe, just to give it a little bit of variation. So then we bring the logo back on, and I'm using contrast of size here as I'm changing. So I'm using contrast of size, contrast of color, so that I have yellow. I alternate between yellow and blue as the wipes come on, and I also have my logo starting big and going small. So you can see here that this yellow wipe that is wiping on this logo is quite a bit bigger than the logo that was on the screen before. So it sends it backwards. And then this wipe is in a similar position to this one, so it feels like it's jumping forward. And then I drop it back as you see the city map behind here as everything wipes off. And that's so that you can see the logo as much as possible throughout most of this transition. So if I play that back, you can see how the logo jumps up, jumps back, jumps up, and lands as it wipes off. So let's go to the intro now that you've seen how I use those oil wipes. And same idea here, just with text. So this starts my wipe on, and I'm also changing text color. See it come on. And part of the messaging for this series title, Bring It Home, was the fact that ring is part of bring. So I wanted to subtly call that out. Obviously, the Nuggets won a ring, winning a championship. So I just used color to subtly highlight that before I brought everything else together with the yellow there. So I call that out, and you can see here, obviously, the text that I start with large is ring. And then we play with, again, contrast of size and color. So the next wipe is going to bring in a little bit smaller as it's wiping off the big one behind it. And the wipe is the same color as the bigger text. And then I switch to a stroke so you can start to see the trophy coming in behind. And you can also see if I solo this, if I solo all of these layers. All right. So this comes on. Again, it's the ring and then bring it. Goes full. And then as this starts to wipe off, it is going back in Z space there. Starting to fall back. And that's just the start of the move to help sell. If I click those off, to help sell the logo coming back. So it's a match cut of falling back to get into the logo. So as this starts coming back, we wipe, and then you start to see the logo. And the logo is moving in the same direction as the bring it text as it's falling back. And then I have the H, M, and the E come up to meet it. And then it drops back, and we get into the player animation, which also is brought on by the stroke. So to leave the logo on a little bit longer and call attention to that area, I also moved Jokic into this space so that his face would take it over. So the logo is really just drawing your eye back into, hey, this is where the next move is going to be. And everything else drops off except for the logo. So if I go into my player images, this is where we were with Jokic coming on. And oil wipe, same thing for all of the player graphics. I did do some hold keyframes here on the X and Y position. I started with their final position and worked backwards, obviously knowing that I wanted Jokic to be in the middle, and him and Jamal Murray were the two main stars of that team. So they're on together on the same level, and then bring in some of the other players on the team. And I was sent this graphic. Lee Olson did a phenomenal job of doing the illustrations for this series. So these are assets that I had that I was able to snag and incorporate into the animation. So since this is an illustrative style and we're using drawn-on effects, I decided to make these choppy and hold frame and move them around as more players came on to help reinforce that. A little bit more of a stop motion style here. And I didn't want to just leave the players in the same spot. It would feel kind of flat if they just came into their resting spot and didn't move after that. So played around a little bit with getting them to each to move, starting in one spot and getting them to move based on their position. and what they were doing in their shot. So, for instance, Porter back here is going into a shooting motion. Looks like he's about to release the ball. So it wouldn't make sense for me to have him up high and then have him come down into the spot. I started him down low, and then he rises into the spot where he is going to eventually end up, like he's going to shoot the ball, about to release the ball. Obviously, Malone's in the middle here as the center, as the head coach. Aaron Gordon pops in, and KCP also pops in here at the end. And you'll notice that as the rest of these fall to the back, they also start to fall into the background a little bit. And I have if I hit E, I have a fill on here so that I can have that fill opacity slowly take over their image to help them push them into the background a little bit more as the camera trucks backward here. And that helps bring out and highlight the other players that are coming on here at the end as we eventually end up wiping onto the mountain part of the Nuggets logo. All right, so let me go back to the intro here. All right, so let me get up here to where we are. So as these are coming on, you see the Larry O'Brien trophy come through there. That's part of that logo. And then we get into the logo lockup. So I'm ending on a blue screen as the backdrop, and you see the same elements that you saw before. You've seen all these elements throughout the piece: the cityscape, the Larry O'Brien trophy, and then the illustration marks, and we have some particles, and we have some brush elements to help knock some of the stuff into the background and focus more on the lockup. So let me jump into the lockup. And the way I built this was I wanted the logo, obviously the Nuggets logo is a big part of this. I wanted that to be the central element here. So as the logo is coming into the rest of it, home, HM, and E are coming up to meet it. And it's like as the logo comes in, the mountains are rising with the city in the foreground there. So the motivation for this move is that the logo is pushing in and everything else is rising to meet it. And I have a flash here switching to yellow with the blue text, and that allowed me to, if I hit tab to get back to my intro, help me get into this last frame with the background being blue. A little bit more contrast, so then we can finish out the move. So it initially falls into the background. We have the city map here. So the yellow of the logo is a little bit of an outline, but it kind of falls into the background. So Bring It Home is really the focal point here. And it's all filled in with dark blue. And then we finish off the animation there. So all of these keyframes here still line up here. So if I shift click there, I offset them by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. And that's to allow for this to change colors. And you can see like there's a little bit of a jump there when it comes back. Starts going and then it jumps back just to give it a little bit more of a eye-catching feel to it. All right, tab to go back. So that's the lockup. Let's talk a little bit about the scenery elements here. If I go down, turn off my lights, You can see it's pretty dark. So we have the blue background. You can't really see the Larry O'Brien trophy over here, and you can't really see the cityscape. And if I turn off these particles, you really can't see much of anything. It's dark. We still have some of the illustration marks here, the brush strokes here for the background to help separate it. But I really wanted to make this logo pop out from the background. So I initially started with a blue highlight just to draw your eye in, make it the brightest part of the screen. So I started there, and then I added these side lights and these two lights over here. So if I solo those lights, they're really moving around and subtly just providing almost like spotlights to call out certain aspects of the background. So you see things a little bit more in some instances, and then they fall away in others, depending on the movement of these lights. So you can see them there, down here, down here. And again, without them, it's super dark. So it brings a little bit of light, highlights more of the elements that are in the background, brings them forward just a touch without being the primary focal point. And we still have our blue highlight here in the background that keeps everything focused on the logo lockup. Let me turn the particles back on. So we have this oil wipe up here. This is going to give us the wipe off. So I timer map this to start at 14 frames. And as we wipe off, you're going to see it follow the alpha channel. So by having this up here and using stencil alpha, it's going to say everything below this layer is going to follow the alpha of this layer. So when I have this wipe off, everything comes with it, regardless of what's down here. Any other adjustments or anything I make won't matter when it comes to the alpha channel. So that's a trick that I use quite a bit if I need everything to wipe off. Just make sure it's one of the top layers or the most top layer that you want it to use that as the wipe off there. And I timer mapped it to start at 14 because that's the full screen. And then it'll wipe off. Cool. So that was a dive into how I built out and created this Bring It Home series intro, and I hope you found it helpful.